Hi, I'm Katie Fehrenbacher, and I'm a senior writer for GreenBiz, and I'm here in the GreenBiz studio with Sam Hartnett, who's the senior associate with Rocky Mountain Institute, and he's a little bit of an expert on energy and blockchain.
I'd emphasize little, but thank you.
So tell us, what is the problem with energy and blockchain? Why are people so worried about it?
Well, there's, I'd say, two different topics there. There's the energy consumption of blockchain networks themselves, and we've seen in recent months publications coming out with estimates that blockchain networks like Bitcoin are maybe using the energy roughly equivalent to a medium-sized country, which is definitely a potential issue in the electricity sector. Rocky Mountain Institute is part of the Energy Web Foundation, and we're building a blockchain infrastructure specifically for transactions in the energy sector. And so designing a system that is less energy intensive and more efficient is important to us. And so we've designed a network with some different features that allow us to use the energy consumption of roughly a small building rather than a small country. And then there's also the uses of blockchain technology in the energy sector, and there the door is a little bit more wide open. You know, we're still in the early days, but we've identified a number of use cases with certificates of origin, demand response, utility billing, and electric vehicles that we think have some interesting opportunities in the next 1 to 3 years.
Okay, let's talk about blockchain as a platform for some of these energy services. I mean, what do you think? Do you think this is starting to be kind of a bubble and too much hype around it, or do you think this is actually a transformative technology?
Yeah, well, I'd say the hype cycle is definitely in full swing. You know, since the beginning of 2017, over $1/3 billion has been raised by companies at this intersection of blockchain and energy. And you see articles all the time, and there's a lot of excitement here. And so people just assume that blockchain's here to save the day. But the reality is nothing like that. You know, blockchain is still very much in the research and development phase. You can look at the number of companies that are active, you know, is a few hundred companies have made announcements or investments in blockchain. A smaller number have actually announced specific pilots. Even fewer have actually implemented pilots, and depending on your definition, there's only a handful of actual commercial applications of blockchain and energy. So it's still early days, and I'd say we're probably a few years away from kind of mass market adoption of this technology.
Okay, and then let's talk about some of the concerns. What do you think about that? Are those overblown, or do we need some of these energy efficient technologies like the ones RMI is working on?
Yeah, so energy consumption is definitely a big one, and obviously if the whole world are running on blockchain and every blockchain was using as much energy as a country, we'd have some serious problems. There's definitely other concerns about the technology. You know, scale is a big one. Right now, public blockchains are somewhere on the order of maybe 3 to 20 transactions a second. If we believe that blockchain is capable of supporting a decentralized and largely renewable grid, we're going to need something with more like millions or potentially billions of transactions a second capability. So that's a ways off. There's also some potential concerns around privacy. We've seen some of the recent regulation in Europe around the right to be forgotten, and how do you manage that with a technology like blockchain where data can never be edited or deleted. So we'll have to rethink some of the approaches there. And more than anything, it needs to be easy for people to use and have a real value. You know, those of us that work on it every day, we get excited about it and want to adopt it, but for your everyday person, you know, I'd say the electricity system works pretty well for them, and people aren't going to make a change unless there's something really compelling and valuable for them in it. And so that ease of use is something that we'll need to think about.
Okay. What's the weirdest or most exciting thing that you've seen using blockchain for energy?
Oh man. The most exciting thing to me is probably something that is long in the future, but it's the potential for us to redesign electricity systems from the bottom up. So start within a building, have all of the smart devices and maybe rooftop PV and batteries interacting with each other in a little market within that building, and then building it like nested Russian dolls. So buildings form together to form local energy communities. Local communities aggregate up into regions until you go on up and up until you hit the transmission level. And so we start balancing and clearing markets at the grid edge and at the customer rather at the top like we do now. And blockchain can play this role of that underlying platform to support these transactions and allow customers and devices to interact with each other directly in ways that aren't quite as possible with traditional centralized approaches. And so that's what excites me. That's years away, but we're seeing the early stages of these types of solutions being researched and developed now.
Interesting. So blockchain can be kind of like the glue for this kind of futuristic energy home or energy building.
That's our hypothesis, and that's what we're actively working on trying to figure out with Energy Web Foundation.
All right. Well, you heard it here from Sam in the Green Biz studio. Thank you so much, Sam, for being here.
Thank you.